All right, today we're going to tackle a massive global challenge. And you know what? It all starts in a place you know very well, your own home. Yep, we're talking about e-waste.
I want you to think about something for a second. Somewhere in your house, there's probably a drawer, or maybe a box, and inside is that old phone with the cracked screen, a laptop that just gave up the ghost, and a whole mess of cables for gadgets you don't even own anymore. You know the one I'm talking about, right?
So if that sounds familiar, you are definitely not alone. That little personal graveyard of gadgets in your house, it's a tiny, tiny piece of a truly gigantic global problem. Okay, so let's get into it. You see, the source of this mountain of waste, it's the electronics industry itself. And it just happens to be the largest and fastest growing manufacturing sector on the entire planet. Every single year, millions of tons of new devices are pumped out, and it feeds this cycle that, let's be honest, has a really messy ending.
So, what are we even talking about when we say e-waste? Well, the definition's pretty simple. It's any electrical or electronic device that's been thrown out. But here's the kicker. These gadgets are often built with really short lifespans. And this whole idea of planned obsolescence, things designed to break, it just means we're creating this waste at a mind-boggling rate.
Okay, but to really wrap our heads around this, I'm not just going to throw a bunch of huge abstract numbers at you. We're going to zoom way in on a specific case study from Brunei, because it really helps us understand the human side of this whole recycling dilemma.
So, what we're looking at here is some really interesting research from the IOP Conference Series. What they did was survey 351 regular consumers to get past all the assumptions and find out, what are people actually thinking and doing with their old tech? And look at this. This really paints a picture of how tangled up these devices are in our daily lives. In this group, almost 90% of people use a mobile phone every day. Almost as many use a computer. And let's be clear, we're not talking about some fancy optional gadgets here. These are the absolute essential tools for modern life. Okay, so that reliance on tech, it leads us right to the core finding of this whole study, the real reason we all hold on to those old devices. And honestly, the answer is probably not what you're thinking. Which brings us to the big question, right? These electronics are completely indispensable, right up until the second they're not. So what happens next?
And here is the kicker. This is what's so fascinating. It turns out the biggest roadblock isn't that people are lazy or that they just don't care. Nope. For a huge majority, over 58% of people, the problem is they just plain don't know what they're supposed to do with their old e-waste. Yeah, the study itself puts it crystal clear. The number one issue isn't attitude, it's information. People are basically in the dark. They don't know where to go or if recycling centers for this stuff even exist near them.
So, what's the result of all this confusion? Well, we come right back to where we started this whole conversation, that drawer full of dead tech. When people don't know what the right thing to do is, the easiest thing to do is nothing at all. They just hang on to it. Okay, but here's where the story takes a really cool, optimistic turn. Because it turns out the problem isn't a lack of will. Far from it. This next part reveals what people actually want to do. And this is so, so important. We have this tendency to think people are the problem, right? But what this research shows is that they're actually the solution, just waiting for a way to help. People genuinely want to do the right thing. I mean, check this out. A full 2/3 of the people they talk to, that's huge. They're willing to actually pay a little money to make sure their e-waste gets handled the right way. That's real commitment. And it's not just that. Get this, an even bigger majority, more than 3/4 of people, think the government should be helping out, maybe subsidizing the whole process. That's a loud and clear message. People want a real system in place. And look, it's not even just about paying or waiting for someone else to fix it. Almost 40% of people said they'd be willing to actually travel to go out of their way just to drop off their old devices properly. I mean, the goodwill is absolutely there. All right, so let's bring this all home. On one hand, you've got this massive, growing e-waste problem. But then you also have all these people who are totally ready and willing to do the right thing. The big question is, how do you bridge that gap? How do you turn all that good intention into actual, real-world action? Well, the research basically lays out a 3-step roadmap. Step 1, you got to understand people's actual behavior. Do the research, just like this study did. Step 2, you have to tackle that number 1 problem we saw, closing the knowledge gap. Tell people what to do.
And then step 3, you build a system that's easy and accessible, one they can actually use. So really, the big takeaway here is that any effective policy has to be built around people. It's not about trying to force people to do something. It's about giving them the tools and the information to do what, as we've seen, they already want to do anyway.
And that really leaves us with one last big question. This research makes a pretty strong case that the public will to fix this e-waste problem is already there. The real question now is, are our systems ready to catch up?